So this is self-determination theory. It's super simple, actually. And that's one of the reasons why this theory of human motivation is so popular around the world. It's because it's simple and anybody can relate to it. Anybody can reflect on his or her experience and understand this simple chain of events. Basically, a leader, a manager, the leadership and management skills that we are exposed to, if they satisfy these basic needs of autonomy, belonging, competence, will lead to outcomes in terms of motivation, engagement, and well-being. So applied to volunteers, and by the way, we have applied this to volunteers in a piece of research that was published in BGM Online in Uganda. Applied to volunteers, well, what we can do is we can actually collect information about these three conceptual blocks of leadership and management, of these three basic needs and motivational outcomes in their different forms. We can collect that, visualize that, using questions from a survey. And the questions in this survey, which is on the MOTI tool, cover the outcome indicators of a successful and satisfying experience. It collects indicators on satisfaction in terms of autonomy, belonging, and competence. And it collects indicators of leadership and management practices as they are perceived by the volunteers. This does not mean that the leader actually behaves that way, but that is how the behavior is perceived. And that's important because, as we heard in the video, we need to adjust to people's perceptions of who we are and not on our own belief of who we are. And so getting feedback from the people on our team is important because that's how we can adjust our perception to their perception and behave accordingly. So if we go more into details, we can say a volunteer is motivated and engaged when supervisors support and encourage volunteer autonomy, when the leader or the manager creates a safe space for volunteers to support each other, and when the team leader gives feedback to the volunteers in such a way that the volunteers feel appreciated for their efforts. Now, if the team leader creates this space, this ambiance of autonomy, belonging, competence, which you see in the gray block, then you will be able to observe, thanks to the MOTI app, the outcomes of that leadership and management behavior and attitude in terms of well-being, in terms of engagement, in terms of motivation, in terms of volunteers being satisfied with what they're doing, volunteers being engaged with what they are doing, volunteers identifying to the team and maybe to the Red Crescent because it shares the same values. Another outcome is the idea, the notion that the volunteer actually wants to continue volunteering for the next years. And maybe most important of all, that the volunteer feels good, that the volunteer feels not just motivated, but happy, mentally healthy. Because sometimes if satisfaction of basic needs is thwarted, is frustrated, where the volunteers don't feel that autonomy, they don't feel they belong in the team, they don't feel competent, they might burn out, they might get depressed, they might stress, their mental health might deteriorate. So all these different types of outcomes are covered by the MOTI app, they are covered by self-determination theory.